It's a new month, so it's a new theme, and this month's theme is about big, big, big magic. Creating a life of big magic. Something like this. There was a magician who was on, see, he's not the only one who this is. There was a magician on a cruise ship who was really quite good. He was excellent. Did sleight of hand and all sorts of other tricks, magic tricks. He was really great. But he had one problem. And the problem was the cruise ship also had a mascot parrot who was very smart and very talkative. And the parrot observed the sleight of hand tricks that this magician did, figured them out, and then would fly around squawking, "It's in his pocket, it's in his pocket. It's up his sleeve, it's up his sleeve. It's in his mouth, it's in its mouth." And he was giving away the tricks of this magician. So the magician is very frustrated and sits down one day and looks at that bird in his little beady eye and says, "Look, you got to stop that because you're blowing my gig here. So stop it or something dire is going to happen." Bird didn't pay any attention to that. Next time again, "It's in his pocket, it's up his sleeve." He's all squawking. And the magician does his best to get through his act. And at the end, he's supposed to disappear in a miraculous puff of smoke. And just as he's getting ready to disappear into this puff of smoke, the ship hits an iceberg and instantly sinks. Two survive this tragedy, and they are the bird and the magician. The magician is lying on a piece of debris, and he's kind of dazed, but he opens his eyes just slightly, and he sees the bird sitting right there, looking at him, staring at him, looking at him, staring at him, and finally says to him, "All right, I give up. What did you do with the ship?" Come on, that was good. That was a good joke. Come on. That's it. There we go. That's what I'm talking about. That's what I want to hear. So we're going to talk this month about big magic, not like that. Big magic, as it is described and discussed in this so hot off the press that my fingers are still burning, book by Elizabeth Gilbert. You all know who Elizabeth Gilbert is. Yes, the Eat, Pray, Love person. She's an amazing author. The book is called Big Magic, Creative Living. Oh, I like that. Creative Living Beyond Fear. Elizabeth Gilbert is featured on the cover of this month's, the November Science of Mind magazine, in case you subscribe to that or buy that in our bookstore. This book and an interview with her is featured in that magazine. And in the book, she describes how to and what attitudes, approaches, habits we need to embody in order to uncover our hidden treasures, in order to face our fears, in order to trust the universe, and all of which lead us to creative living, or living creatively, which is what we came here to do, which is what the divine as us wants to do through us. So we're going to use her book to give us some wonderful ideas about how to do this, and we're going to couple it with Ernest Holmes' Creative Mind and Success. So we're going brand new, pretty old, because this is 2015, this is 1919, and yet they complement each other beautifully in ideas and thoughts. So we're going to go from the brand new to the fairly old to look at creating big magic in our lives. And if you're interested in buying either of those two books this month, you can buy them on sale in the bookstore. Did we sell out of Big Magic first service? Nobody is here that knows that right now. But anyway, if we did, we'll have more next week, we promise. So early on in Big Magic, Elizabeth Gilbert asks a question. She poses a question. And it's a question I want to pose to us this morning and then explore the question a little bit. And she writes, "So this, I believe, is the central question upon which all creative living hinges." And I just want to go off on a little side tangent. I love it that it's creative living is what she's talking about, because this church's name is? Thank you. Right, exactly. So we're all about creative living. How perfect. She wrote a book just for us. Wasn't that nice of her to do that? So again, this, I believe, is the central question upon which all creative living hinges. Do you have the courage to bring forth the treasures that are hidden in you? Do you have the courage to bring forth the treasures that are hidden in you. Look, she writes, I don't know what's hidden within you. I have no way of knowing such a thing. You yourself may barely know, although I suspect you've caught glimpses. I don't know your capabilities. I don't know your aspirations. I don't know your longings. I don't know your secret talents. But surely something wonderful is sheltered inside you. I say this with all confidence because I happen to believe that we are all walking repositories of buried treasure. I love that phrase. We are all walking repositories of buried treasure. I believe this is one of the oldest and most generous tricks the universe plays on us human beings, both for its own amusement and for ours. The universe buries strange jewels deep within us and then stands back to see if we can find them. And that's very consistent with an ancient Hindu story of the angels and God having a conversation about where to hide humanity's divinity. So they're having this conversation and where to hide it so that humanity won't find it, or at least they'll have they'll really have to look for it. They'll really have to dig for it. And the one angel says, well, I know, let's hide it at the bottom of the ocean. And God says, you know what? No, humanity's pretty smart. Someday they're going to figure out how to get to the bottom of the ocean. They'll find it there. Another angel says, well, let's hide it at the center of the earth. Well, no, I think they're going to find out how to get to the center of the earth too. Don't think that'll work. Another angel says, how about at the top of the highest mountain? God says, nope, they're going to figure out how to get up there. They're going to climb up there. They'll find it. One angel finally says, I've got it. I know exactly where to hide it, where they will never even think to look, right inside of them. So buried inside of us is our divinity, are our hidden treasures. So Elizabeth Gilbert goes on to write, and to back up in one sentence, the universe buries strange jewels deep within us and then stands back to see if we can find them. The hunt to uncover those jewels, the courage to go on that hunt in the first place, that's creative living. That's what separates a mundane existence from a more enchanted one. The often surprising result of that hunt, that's what I call big magic. So we're going to go on the hunt this month and to create big magic. Now, before we do, I want to be absolutely clear about something. Absolutely, totally clear, because I don't want 3/4 of you to think that this month does not apply to you. Because if I don't clear this up, you might think that. When we say creative living, beyond the church here, when Elizabeth Gilbert refers to creative living, and when I'm going to talk about it this month, we are not talking just about people who are quote unquote creative. We're not just talking about the talents that look like writing songs, working in silver, that look like singing songs, that look like writing poetry or novels, or being an artist, a designer, or a sculptor. I mean, those are all great things, and some of you are those things, and those are your talents, and that's wonderful. But that's not all that creative living is. Creative living is much more than that, and so I want to make sure that we all are on the same page for the definition of what creative living means. Because I know there's somebody out there thinking like I used to think in my life many years ago. I thought, I'm not creative. I believed that for 35 years of my life, that I was not creative. I believed it at my core. And if I'd sat out at that time in a congregation like this and heard the minister say, I'm going to talk a whole month about living creatively, I would have gone, well, that's not for me. Thank you so much. I'll see you in December. So I want to be really clear that there are two components to creative living that the components make up creative living. The first one is living creatively is living a life that is driven more by curiosity than by fear. Okay? Living a life driven more by curiosity than by fear. And the second piece of it is living a life which brings forth out of you whatever it is that creates joy and fulfillment in your life, which then, in turn, blesses the world. Because there is no such thing as private good. So when you bring forth joy and fulfillment out of you, you offer that to the world, and the world is blessed. Absolutely. So again, creative living is not just about being a creative person who, can do art. It is about wanting to live a life that is driven more by curiosity than by fear, and by calling forth from you that which brings you joy and fulfillment, and then therefore blesses the world. So in Big Magic, Elizabeth Gilbert gives an example to make really clear that we're not just talking about the artists and the sculptures and the authors. She tells a story of her friend Susan, who took up figure skating at age 40. Well, she actually didn't take up figure skating at 40. She started figure skating as a young girl. And she was a skater and a really good one. And as she grew and as she learned and as she got into competition and things, she discovered that she actually didn't have the innate talent to be a champion. She wasn't going to win any medals. And she decided at a very young age, why bother if you can't be the best? That was what she said. Why bother if you can't be the best? So she quit skating. At 40 years old, you know, those 0 birthdays can cause us to, have a little reflection, right? Anybody ever had reflection on a 0 birthday? Yes. So she was at her 40th birthday, and it was causing her reflection. And she recognized that she felt listless and unsettled and sort of out of sorts. And she did a little soul searching. She was curious. What's up with this? And she thought back, when was the last time I felt fulfilled? When was the last time I really felt joy and freedom and all those other emotions that go along with being fulfilled? And she thought, it was when I was figure skating. That's when it was. And she had a little bit of sadness that it was now decades that she hadn't done that and hadn't felt that. And she also, again, had curiosity about whether or not figure skating would still give her that kind of joy and fulfillment. So she decided to find out. She bought a pair of skates, she found a rink, and she hired a coach. She put aside and ignored the voice in her that said, you're being self-indulgent. This is ridiculous. You're 40 years old. Are you crazy? You can't do this. She ignored, she listened, she heard, but then ignored that voice. She also heard, but then ignored the voice that said, you should be really self-conscious about this because you're 40 years old and there are little 9-year-olds, thin, little winsome, feathery 9-year-olds doing twirls and turns and double axles and all out there, and here you are 40. You should be so self-conscious. She heard those words, and she ignored them as well. 3 mornings a week, she'd get up before dawn. She'd go to the rink, and she would skate. Then she'd go off to her very demanding job. She skated, Elizabeth Gilbert says, just for the joy and the freedom and the fulfillment that she felt when she skated. She skated just because it made her feel alive. It was a revolution, a literal revolution, as she spun to life again on the ice. Revolution upon revolution upon revolution. Please note that my friend did not quit her job. She did not sell her home. She did not sever all her relationships and move to Toronto to study 70 hours a week with an exacting Olympic-level skating coach. And no, this story does not end with her winning any championship medals. In fact, the story does not end because she still figure skates several mornings a week. Simply because skating is still the best way for her to unfold a certain beauty and transcendence within her life that she cannot seem to access in any other manner. And she would like to spend as much time as possible in such a state of transcendence while she is still here on earth. That's all. That's what I call creative living. Isn't that beautiful? And so beautifully written. You want to get the whole book and read it because she's such a beautiful author and says things so incredibly beautifully and irreverently. And I do need to say this disclaimer if I'm offering the book, she throws some curse words in there, so you got to make sure you're okay with that. Just got to, you're adults, but I just want to make sure you know that they're in there and that it's okay. So I invite you, or the question that I ask for each of us this morning is, what treasure is buried in you that wants to come out? I loved hearing. I didn't know that you were a metalsmith, and that Lonnie said for the last 4 years. So this is fairly recent that you have let that come out of you. How lovely that is. How lovely that is. So what's buried in you? Maybe you already know, you've had nudgings, you just haven't acted on it. Maybe you don't know. This could be a month to have the courage to discover it. And it takes courage. It takes courage to discover it. It takes courage that if you've discovered it, to bring it forth into the world, because we have innately in us, it's part of our how we're wired to have fear of the unknown. And it was in us, it's in us for a good reason. You know, nature gave us fear as a safety mechanism, because when we were being chased by a saber-toothed tiger, we needed to, have fear to kick us into gear. So whenever we start something new and we don't know what's going to happen, we kind of feel, our body feels like we're being chased by a saber-toothed tiger, and the fear kicks in. So fear is not a bad thing. It's just not going to support us in bringing forth our hidden treasure. So we need to deal with fear. Elizabeth Gilbert gives a very, 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 very long list of fears that we might be feeling when we think about the idea of uncovering or expressing our hidden treasures. And I read a long list, not her whole list, but I read a pretty long list in first service, and I could feel the people kind of wearing down as I was reading the list. So I'm not going to read as long. You can read the list in there. But just, I want you to identify, like, oh yeah, you know what? I recognize that one. I recognize that one. Because it helps to recognize it, so then we can have a conversation with it, which we'll have a little bit later. But here's the big one. We're afraid that we won't be any good at doing whatever is nudging us, right? We're afraid that it's not going to be any good, so why should we do it anyway? We'll fail at doing it anyway, so why try? We're afraid that we'll be rejected or criticized or ridiculed or misunderstood, or worst of all, ignored. We're afraid somebody else already did it better. We're afraid everybody else already did it better. We're afraid our dreams are embarrassing or we won't be taken seriously. We're afraid that we'll look back sometime in our lives and think that this endeavor was a giant waste of time, effort, and money. We're afraid, I have to read this one because it cracks me up. We're afraid that we are too fat. And Elizabeth Gilbert writes, I don't know what this has to do with creativity exactly, but experience has taught me that most of us are afraid that we're too fat. So let's just put that anxiety on the list for good measure. Right? Right? We're afraid our best work is behind us. We're afraid we never had any best work to begin with. We're afraid we're too old to start. We're afraid we're too young to start. We're afraid we've neglected the treasure buried in us for so long that we'll never find it. We're afraid of being a one-hit wonder. We're afraid of being a no-hit wonder. And the list goes on and on and on. So did anybody find anything in there that I said, like, oh yeah, I found a couple in me? Right. There they are. So as I already said, our fears aren't going to go away. They're with us. The question then is, what do we do about it? How do we address it? How do we live with them and still uncover and then release that which we came here to do? How we came here to live creatively. First of all, here's a new way to look at fear that Elizabeth Gilbert offers us, and I absolutely love it. She says, remember I said she's very great writer and she's very funny, has a little bit of a to her humor. She writes, our fear is really boring. It never changes. It never delights. It never offers a surprise twist or an unexpected ending. Fear is a song with only one note, only one word actually, repeated at full volume on an endless loop, and the word is stop. We are all equipped with the same basic fear package. There's nothing interesting or compelling about it. On the other hand, you are very interesting and very compelling. Your ideas, your thoughts, your perspective, your talents, your gifts, all of those things, your aspirations are very compelling and very interesting. So Elizabeth Gilbert says and asks the questions, do we really want to build our lives around the most boring instinct we have? And I think the answer to that is no. We don't want to build our lives around our most boring insect. Yes, like an insect, isn't it? We want to build it around what is interesting about us and unique and exciting, our aspirations, our dreams, our goals, our hidden treasures. Ernest Holmes, you knew I'd get to him eventually. Ernest Holmes writes in Creative Mind and Success that fear brings failure. It's just that simple. When we let fear run the ship, when we let fear put up that sign that says stop and we listen to it. I think back on 20 years ago. This year, 2015, Creative Living Fellowship is celebrating and has celebrated this year our 20th anniversary. We had a big blowout, amazing experience in May to celebrate the anniversary. That's why we have this banner up here celebrating 20 years of love, light, and truth. 20 years ago, there was a group of people, Lonnie and I included in that exclusive group, that were told by their church that they should leave. What? We were told by our church that we should leave because we were bad influences, or basically is what it was. It's true. It's true. We do not need to go into the details of that, but the bottom line is we were told to leave. Now, Lonnie and I were told a year before Creative Living Fellowship was formed, and so for that year, we did leave, and we kind of licked our wounds for that year. A year later, we get a call from someone we knew at that church who said, you've been gone, and we're leaving too, and we'd like, it's a long story, I'm not getting into the details of it, but we are going to form a new church, and would you come be a part of it? Not as a minister, I wasn't a minister, just as a congregant. We said yes to that. But what I am incredibly beyond words grateful for is that 17 people, not the two of us at the beginning, 17 people most of whom were asked to leave their church, said, we're going to start another one. And they did not let fear of what had happened, what might happen again, what could or couldn't happen, whether or not another church would make it, would be successful, would live on, didn't let any of that fear stop them. They just were curious about whether it would work, and they wanted to bring forth something that would bring them joy and fulfillment, and so they started Creative Living Fellowship. And I say to each of them, are any of you here today? Reverend Sandy was right there. We had Dolly. Thank you, Dolly. Thank you, Sandy. Thank you, Lonnie. Just a tiny bit later, we had Reverend Leonard Minks in our first service, and the daughter of one of our founding members who has since passed away, but her daughter was here. So let's just give these folks a hand. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. Because we wouldn't be here today doing what we're doing and having this amazing experience together and that we've had over 20 years together if they hadn't said no to fear. If they hadn't not listened, if they had not listened to that voice that said stop, they didn't pay any attention to that. They just went forward and fulfilled a dream. And we are here today, the beneficiaries of the fulfillment of that dream. And as I said, we celebrated 20 years. We had a big celebration experience in May. And during the rest of the course this year, we've been talking about what else can we do? What else can we do to commemorate 20 years and celebrate it? And we finally hit on another idea, and I just want to tell you about it real quick. And that is we are creating travel mugs, hot or cold, 16-ounce. That's a grande, Starbucks grande, just in case you need to know what size that is. Travel mugs that have the logo on the 20th anniversary logo, and then on the back, a really cool affirmation, which says something amazing is happening to me today. Thank you, God. So if you want to get one of those and commemorate the 20th anniversary, they're on pre-sale in the bookstore or at the registration corner. Now, there was just a little plug for that. So whenever we're going to... Yes, Cynthia, dear? No, we haven't completely decided on that one, so not yet. No, we're still in debate about whether or not that would be a good idea. So thank you for that, but we're still discussing that. We'll let you know about that. We're concerned about the cleaning bill on the carpet. Even though they're travel mugs, we're not so sure that we don't know yet about that. All right, so Elizabeth Gilbert says no matter what, and this is so true, no matter what the new endeavor that we're going to embark on, there is fear. So we just need to take it with us on the road trip. It's just going to go, so let's just take it along. And she writes, it isn't easy or comfortable being on this road trip with fear, but it is always worth it, because if you can't learn to travel comfortably alongside your fear, then you'll never be able to go anywhere interesting or do anything interesting. And that would be a pity, because your life is rare and amazing and miraculous. And you want to do really interesting things and make really interesting things while you are still here. And you have treasures hidden within you, extraordinary treasures, and bringing those treasures to light takes work and faith and focus and courage and devotion, and the clock is ticking and the world is spinning, and we simply do not have time anymore to think so small. I love that. It's time for us to bring forth that gorgeous whatever is within us. Ernest Holmes helps us identify a way to face our fears. And Elizabeth Gilbert does as well. So I'm going to share those two ideas with you as we bring our time to a close. Ernest, of course, is going to be very much how are we thinking about things and what are we thinking about things. The what we're thinking is the critical piece here. So in Creative Mind and Success, he offers us this suggestion if we're facing our fears. And in this context, we're facing them in the discovery and the bringing forth of our hidden treasures. So he writes, let us fill ourselves with such courage and power of strength that all thought of weakness, and I'm going to add fear, flees before us. So again, let us fill ourselves with such courage and power of strength that all thoughts of weakness and fear flee before us. If any thought of weakness or fear should come, ask this question: is life weak and fearful? If life is not weak and fearful, and if God is not discouraged, then you are not either. You never were, and you never will be. Ernest is getting a little attitude there as well. Getting a little Elizabeth Gilbert attitude. You never were, and you never will be. Although I will add, you may think that you have been. But your core, you have not been. I should like to see the sickly, discouraged thought that could withstand this attitude of mind. No, life is strong, and you are strong with the strength of the infinite. Forget all else as you revel in this strength. You are strong and can say, I am, all capital letters. You have been laboring under an illusion. Now you are disillusioned. Now you know, and knowing is using the law in a constructive way. I and the infinite Mother, Father, God are one. This is the strength for the weak and life for all who believe this. So that appears on page 15 of Creative Mind and Success. If you have that book, I would highly recommend that you pull that out, and as you're exploring this month, that you put that somewhere that you can read that all the time. I am, he says. You can say, I am. Forget all else as you revel in the strength of who you are. That'll let you face the fear. Elizabeth Gilbert gives us another suggestion. She suggests something that she does all the time, and that is to have a conversation with your fear. And she offers that conversation in her book in the form of a letter. So I'm going to share the letter. Dear Fear, creativity and I are about to go on a road trip. I understand you'll be joining us because you always do. I acknowledge that you believe you have an important job to do in my life and that you take your job seriously. Apparently, your job is to induce complete panic whenever I'm about to do anything interesting. And may I say, you are superb at your job. So by all means, keep doing your job if you feel you must. But I will also be doing my job on this road trip, which is to bring faith and courage and focus and devotion to my work. And creativity will be doing its job, which is to stimulate and inspire. There's plenty of room in this vehicle for all of us, so make room for yourself, make yourself at home, but understand this. Creativity and I are the ones who will be making all the decisions along the way. I recognize and respect that you are part of this family, and so I will never exclude you from the activities, but still, your suggestions will never be followed. You're allowed to have a seat, you're allowed to have a voice, but you are not allowed to have a vote. You're not allowed to touch the road maps. You're not allowed to suggest detours. You're not allowed to fiddle with the temperature. Dude, you're not even allowed to touch the radio. But above all else, my dear old familiar friend, you absolutely are forbidden to drive. So remember, you have hidden treasures in you, extraordinary treasures in you. Bringing those treasures out to light is what you came here to do. The clock is ticking, the world is spinning, and you simply don't have time anymore to think small. The God in you, as you, is you, wants this for you. And I affirm that knowing that and believing that, you'll have the courage not only to discover, but to express that hidden treasure. Let's anchor these ideas in prayer. So we do know, and in this moment, expand our knowing and move into a feeling of knowing that there is one presence and one power, and it is God, and it is good. It is strength. It is creativity. It is the essence of power. It is love and joy and fulfillment. Let us feel that for a moment, recognizing that this one power that permeates everything and therefore permeates us is all that we could ever want or need or desire. It is the hidden treasure within us. It is the strength to bring out that treasure. It even is the fear that causes us to be cautionary. It is all of that. And what we do is simply make friends now with that aspect of us that is fear. And I affirm and know and speak my word for each of us that that is what we do. That we simply know that it is there. It is there for a purpose. It is there to keep us safe. And so we allow it to, in fact, be a companion on this road, on this journey of discovery, of this journey of uncovering and expressing more fully, creating more fully big magic in our lives. We let it simply come on as a companion. And we listen to it only when it is truly, truly, truly there to keep us from danger. And we're grateful for that. But instead, as we're unveiling and discovering, we listen to creativity, we listen to inspiration, we listen to passion, we listen to the voice that says, yes, you can. That is what we do, and I'm so grateful that we do that. And as we do that, we do in fact create big magic in our lives. Knowing, believing, absolutely knowing that this is so. And having a deep belief in believing the master teacher Jesus, who said, it is done unto us as we believe. So having a deep belief that these words that I have spoken are now operating in, as, and through us because the law has said, yes, I am grateful. I am grateful for the big magic that occurs in our lives this month. I'm grateful for the demonstrations that occur through us and as us. I'm grateful for the fun and the joy and the fulfillment that we experience. So with gratitude, I now let this prayer go. I release it into the perfect action of the law. And I call it good. Oh, so very, very good. And let us together say, and so it is.